Her hands trembled as soldiers lifted her into the carriage. She was 16 years old. History remembers her only as Consort Han, one of the Korean tribute women, delivered to the Ming Emperor. Her mother, who could not write, signed the document with an ink mark, one less daughter to feed in a time of famine. Han traveled for weeks in a sealed carriage with 15 other maidens, forbidden to look outside or speak. One girl who tried to escape was returned with a crushed hand. She died of infection days later, her body left on the roadside. The lesson was absolute. Resistance was not an option. When the gates of the Forbidden City closed behind her, Han learned that serving the Son of Heaven had nothing to do with honor. She would live 16 years inside those walls. She would watch an entire harem disappear in a single night. She would beg to see her mother one last time, and she would die in white silk. Her story began as tens of thousands did, within a system designed to harvest young women like a crop. Forget the elegant propaganda of silks and poetry. For over 2,000 years, the Imperial concubine system classified women not as wives or humans, but as precious objects, equated to porcelain vases in the law. Every 3 years, the Shunu selection swept the provinces. It was not an audition, but a forced harvest. No family was exempt. Hiding a daughter meant execution for the entire household. Eunuchs and physicians inspected every inch of their bodies. Any flaw meant disqualification. Those taken were given minimal compensation. Refusing it was treason. The system didn't need to kidnap. Poverty did its work. Most families never heard from their daughters again. Letters and visits were forbidden. Some held funerals for daughters still alive, understanding the girl they knew was already gone. Han arrived as diplomatic property. Between 1408 and 1435, over 100 Korean women were sent to Forbidden City not as visitors, but as possessions. The day she crossed the palace gate, she ceased to be a person. First came refinement, a brutal, months-long process to break her. Her hair was cut, a mark of dishonor. Her name was replaced with a number. Mentions of her family brought physical punishment. Personal belongings were burned. She slept in barracks, 20 to a room, woken before dawn and kept awake past midnight, exhausted into submission. Then came training. Endless hours learning dozens of bows, walking in silence, smiling on command, 47 rules just for standing in the emperor's presence. A mistake meant a beating. Finally, a clinical, dehumanizing preparation to serve, designed to eliminate the last vestiges of psychological or physical resistance. We want to hear from you. Where are you watching from? Comment your city below. If the story of hidden history resonated with you, please share it and suggest what sinister chapter we should uncover next. The examinations were monthly, a coldly clinical process where those deemed inadequate were subjected to what the records call preparation protocols. The language is detached, administrative, as if describing the training of livestock. Those who survived were pronounced ready to enter the true hell of the harem's official hierarchy. This hierarchy was a meticulously crafted prison. At its peak, the empress, then the imperial consorts, followed by stratified levels of concubines. At the very bottom, common concubines and the preparation women, their fate still dangling. Rank dictated every detail of existence. The color of your robe, the size of your room, the very food on your plate. While the empress received over 22 pounds of prime meat daily, a low-ranking concubine might be allotted 4, often stolen by corrupt eunuchs before it reached her. Malnutrition was rampant, leading to rotting teeth, thinning hair, and premature aging, a cruel irony that made them even less likely to be chosen, locking them in a designed downward spiral. The emperor did not visit. He summoned. Each night, eunuchs presented wooden tablets with names and portraits. The chosen woman was bathed, then wrapped naked in silk, carried like a parcel to the imperial chamber, a precaution against concealed weapons. There, she had to crawl to the foot of the bed. Behind a screen, a chief eunuch kept time. After precisely 30 minutes, he would declare, "Time to preserve the golden essence of the Son of Heaven." ending the encounter. Afterwards, an imperial physician conducted a detailed examination, creating a record to authenticate any potential pregnancy. Yet the core perversion was this: most were never summoned, with hundreds, sometimes thousands of women and an emperor choosing perhaps twice a week. A concubine could spend decades waiting for a call that never came. She was property in permanent storage, her sole purpose forever unfulfilled, unable to leave or build any other life. Trapped in this gilded arena, the women turned on each other. The harem became a centuries-long hidden war. Food was poisoned, eunuchs bribed, rumors weaponized. Historical accounts tell the abortifacients slipped into a rival's tea. A lost child meant lost favor. Legends, like that of Empress Wu Zetian allegedly murdering her own newborn to frame a rival, are debated by historians. But their very plausibility exposes the culture's venom. The violence was not always physical. It was a constant, corrosive psychological warfare where alliances shifted with a single glance from the emperor at dinner. This was the true cost of the palace's splendor, a silent, desperate battle for survival in a world designed for their oblivion. One account from the Qing Dynasty tells of a concubine who spent 3 years feigning friendship with a rival, only to offer damning testimony against her when the empress investigated claims of disloyalty. The rival was demoted to servant. Her children were taken. This was not mere cruelty, it was survival. In a system where a woman's only power flowed from the emperor's favor, destroying your competition was the only strategy that worked. The ultimate tragedy was how the system turned victims into perpetrators, forcing those who had been kidnapped and dehumanized to learn how to dehumanize others, simply to avoid being destroyed first. And if a woman somehow survived the endless intrigue and caught the emperor's fleeting attention, if she became pregnant, the real nightmare began. Contrary to expectation, pregnancy was often the worst fate for a low-ranking concubine. She would be isolated in a remote palace, under constant surveillance for 9 months, cut off from all visitors in the outside world. When the child was born, it was immediately taken. A son was handed to wet nurses and raised apart from her. She might see him once a year, under watchful eyes, forbidden from touch. A daughter often simply vanished from the records. Some women, desperate to avoid this cycle, secretly consumed abortive herbs, choosing to risk death rather than bring a daughter into the same system. And if a child died, the mother was blamed, accused of negligence or murder. One Qing concubine who lost 3 children to smallpox was accused of having poisoned karma and spent her next 40 years confined to a single room. Her crime the profound act of burying her own children. Yet, as cruel as daily existence was, nothing could prepare the women for the terror of 1421. Emperor Yongle had just inaugurated the Forbidden City at the peak of his power, when a rumor unraveled everything. After a favorite concubine was found dead, officially poisoned, but whispers spoke of suicide and an affair fueled by the emperor's impotence. Yongle's humiliation curdled into paranoia. He ordered an investigation not for justice, but for silence. In a single night, 2,800 women of the harem were executed via death by 1,000 cuts, a method designed to prolong agony. The victims, concubines, servants, laundresses, girls as young as 12, screamed for hours until dawn. By morning, the courtyards had to be scrubbed with buckets of water from the palace wells, the same wells where so many women would later choose to end their own lives. This atrocity was erased from Ming court records, but the testimony of Lady Kuei survived. A concubine who was outside the palace that night. She escaped the purge by accident. Years later, she dictated her account to a Korean envoy, describing the screams that lasted until dawn, the corridors slick with blood, and the names of friends she had lost. Her words were preserved in Korean diplomatic archives, a fragile testament to the horror. Lady Kuei's reprieve was brief. When Emperor Yongle died 3 years later, she was selected for accompanying sacrifice. Her last recorded words, "I survived the night of blood only to die in silk." Han, the young Korean tribute, also survived that massacre, but her relief was short-lived. 3 years after surviving the massacre, When Emperor Yongle died, Han was granted a final, horrific honor, Xuanzang, accompanying sacrifice. The logic was simple. The emperor would need companionship in the afterlife. Days after his death, the chosen women, between 5 and 30, were given a sumptuous last meal, with music playing as if at a celebration. Then they faced a choice. They could hang themselves voluntarily with white silk, an honorable death that brought their families compensation. Or they could refuse, and the eunuchs would hang them by force or drug them into unconsciousness, placing their bodies, some still breathing, in seated positions within the tomb chambers, arranged to serve for eternity. When archaeologists opened the tomb of Emperor Jingtai centuries later, they found the remains of 16 women. 3 skeletons bore signs of struggle, fractured bones, scratches on the stone. They had been buried alive and had tried to escape. Han was not spared. In 1424, decade before the practice was abolished, her plea to return to her aging mother in Korea was denied. They hanged her with white silk and buried her beside the emperor, whose world had destroyed her. But abolition did not mean freedom. For the concubines who came after, it meant something perhaps more desolate: the palace of perpetual solitude. Survivors were confined to Forbidden City's remotest corners, forbidden to leave, marry, or contact the outside world. They slept on mats, performed manual labor, and prayed 3 times daily for the dead emperor. Many went mad. Others simply stopped eating. The most common escape was the garden wells. During the 18th century, an average of 12 bodies were retrieved from them each year, removed without ceremony. The youngest recorded widow was 14, married to an elderly emperor for just 3 months. She spent the next 61 years in that solitude, dying at 75, a lifetime spent mourning a stranger. The system finally ended, but its shadows linger. The last Imperial concubine died in 1946, alone and addicted to opium in a prison cell, buried in an unmarked grave. Today, 14 million tourists visit the Forbidden City each year. They walk the golden courtyards, admire the yellow roofs, take photos before the thrones. The guides speak of power and architecture. They do not point to the sealed wells, or the buildings once called the Palace of Perpetual Solitude. They do not explain why the Palace of Compassion and Tranquility was locked away for decades. The haunted reputation is dismissed, without ever asking why it haunts. Han was 16 when they placed her in that carriage. She was 32 when they silenced her with silk. In those 16 years, she never saw her mother again, never touched her homeland, never heard her true name spoken with love. She was sold as tribute, broken into an object, used as a vessel, and buried as an accessory. And she was just one of tens of thousands. If stories like this reveal the hidden gears of history for you, we want to hear where you're watching from. Comment your city below. If this journey into the shadows moved you, please share it and let us know which sinister empire we should explore next. Historians estimate that over 2,000 years of Imperial China, more than 100,000 women passed through the concubine system. The vast majority of their names were never recorded. Their stories were never told. They existed as numbers in administrative ledgers, as silent occupants of tombs, as the unseen ghosts in the palaces that millions now photograph. While modern celebrations of history often highlight monumental achievements, the inventions of gunpowder and the compass, they seldom pause to examine the brutal human cost, the perfected industrialization of female suffering that underpinned that same civilization. But silence does not honor the victims, and forgetting does not bring justice. The walls of the Forbidden City still stand. The stones remember. And now, you remember too. If you've made it this far, we want to hear from you. Which part of this story impacted you the most? Let us know in the comments, and tell us which city you're watching from. If you believe these buried truths deserve to be told, subscribe to Sinister Empires. Share this video to help unearth the stories that history tried to forget. There are many more waiting in the shadows.